We had barely finished unpacking when the trouble began. My wife Jenna and I had just moved into our lakeside cabin, a dream getaway from city life. The fresh pine air, peaceful mornings, and the sound of water gently lapping against the dock felt like a new chapter. We didn't expect that chapter to begin with. A knock on the door from Karen. Clipboard in hand, eyes already judging. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, greeted us not with a hello but with a demand. She handed us a packet of rules, fees, and expectations, saying we needed to join the homeowners association. Jenna politely declined, explaining that our property wasn't under the HOA's jurisdiction. The cabin had been grandfathered out, but Karen wasn't interested in legalities. She insisted, her voice rising, saying everyone must comply for the good of the community. Over the next few days, we tried to ignore her. We focused on settling in, planting flowers, repairing the dock, and enjoying our coffee on the porch. Karen, however, was relentless. She walked by daily, sometimes twice, sometimes standing across the gravel road and writing notes on her clipboard, sometimes snapping photos. One morning, she even reached over our fence to measure the height of our grass with a ruler. Then came the shouting. Karen showed up again, red-faced this time, accusing us of violating HOA lawn standards, which didn't apply to us. Jenna calmly reminded her of that, but Karen wasn't hearing it. She threatened to escalate things, said she had connections with local law enforcement, and that people like us didn't understand the importance of community order. Later that afternoon, as we relaxed near the dock with our coffee, a patrol boat approached, red and blue lights flashing. 3 officers stood on board, armed and alert. Karen followed closely behind, triumphant. Clutching her papers like they were sacred law, she marched onto the dock, shouting that we were in violation, demanding they take action. Jenna stood up slowly, placing her mug on the table. She walked toward the officers. Calm and steady. Karen screamed louder, now pointing directly at Jenna, accusing her of trespassing, of being a nuisance, and a danger to the neighborhood. The officers didn't move. Instead, they looked to Jenna. Their posture shifted. One officer gave a small nod. The boat's engine quieted, and Karen paused, her shouting trailing into confusion. That's when Jenna reached into her jacket and pulled out her badge. Shiny, gold, official, and marked with the seal of the county sheriff's office. Karen's face drained of color. The silence on the dock was thick enough to taste. Jenna stepped forward, her voice clear but calm, introducing herself as Sheriff Jenna Harper, and asked Karen if she would like to restate her accusations. Karen stumbled backward, trying to regain composure, claiming it was a misunderstanding. She said she hadn't recognized Jenna, said it was all about the HOA rules and maintaining order. The officers behind her didn't speak. They waited, as if this scene had played out before in other towns with other Karens. Jenna didn't raise it. Her voice didn't accuse or shame. She simply asked Karen for her identification. Karen protested, said she was the one who called the victim, but Jenna reminded her that filing a false police report and wasting county resources was a crime, and asked again for ID. Karen's hands trembled as she reached into her purse. Offering a shaky driver's license, Jenna took it, made a note, and calmly informed her that she was issuing a formal warning for misuse of emergency services, and that any future harassment would result in charges. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. We watched as Karen, humiliated and quiet for once, turned and walked quickly back toward the neighborhood. The officers nodded respectfully to Jenna. One muttered, "Nice work, Sheriff," and returned to the boat. The dock was quiet again. The sun dipped lower over the lake, painting the water gold. Over the next week, Karen didn't come by. No clipboard, no ruler, no photos. We heard whispers around the neighborhood that people were shocked to find out Jenna was law enforcement, that Karen had gone too far this time, and that maybe, just maybe, the HOA didn't run everything. Life settled after that. We resumed our peaceful days. Jenna returned to her duties at the sheriff's department in town, and I focused on my writing. Occasionally we'd see Karen at the general store. She wouldn't look us in the eye. Sometimes she'd duck behind a display of potato chips or pretend to be on the phone. Then came the HOA meeting, held monthly in the community center near the lake. Jenna received an invitation, handwritten and oddly formal, likely from someone hoping she would come and maybe calm things down. We decided to attend, out of curiosity more than anything. Inside the room, folding chairs were arranged in rows, and a long table sat at the front, where Karen and a few other board members perched, guarded and stiff. Karen's eyes widened when she saw Jenna, but she kept her face composed. The meeting began with general announcements, then came new business. A man in the second row stood up, cleared his throat, and asked why the HOA continued to harass non-member residents. Karen began to speak, but he interrupted, referencing Jenna's situation, saying it had been embarrassing for the entire neighborhood, that lines had been crossed, and boundaries ignored. Others chimed in, some quietly, some loudly. A woman near the back said she'd always felt intimidated by Karen. Another said she was threatened with fines for having a pink mailbox, which wasn't even against the code. The room became a flood of complaints. small injustices, and long-held frustrations. Karen tried to maintain order, pounding a gavel, but no one listened. Finally, Jenna stood, not as the sheriff, but as a neighbor. She said she believed in community, in fairness, in people helping each other, not controlling each other. She said HOA power should be limited, transparent, and voluntary. Applause erupted, small at first, then swelling into something real. Karen sat frozen, lips pursed, knowing the tide had turned. By the end of the meeting, a vote was taken. The board would be restructured. Karen's position as chair was revoked, new guidelines would be drafted, and all residents, members or not, would be respected. Back at home, we poured 2 glasses of sweet tea, sat on the porch, and watched the sun dip below the trees. Jenna smiled, relaxed for the first time in weeks. We didn't come to the lake to change things. We just came to live. But sometimes, the quietest people carry the biggest badges. Weeks passed, peace returned. Neighbors waved more often. Someone left a pie on our porch. No note, just kindness. The flowers Jenna planted bloomed full and bright. The dock remained silent and calm, and Karen, though still in town, remained a shadow of her former self. One morning, we saw her walking alone near the shoreline. No clipboard, no drama, just her and the gravel path. Maybe she'd learned something, maybe not. Either way, we had no more calls. No more shouting, no more threats. Just the sound of wind through trees and the lap of water against the dock. Sometimes justice doesn't need sirens or handcuffs. Sometimes it just needs a coffee mug, a steady voice, and a badge tucked beneath a flannel shirt. Jenna never bragged about what happened, never brought it up, but I saw how the community changed around her, not through force, but through quiet strength. And so the lake remained calm. The sheriff remained respected, and Karen, well, Karen found other things to do. We never did join the HOA, but somehow, we ended up improving the neighborhood more than any rulebook ever could. Think Karen had the upper hand. Think again, and it only gets better from here. Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to QZ Stories for more wild turns and sweet